Chapter 13. The first spaceship to arrive. The Rigel generational ship reached its destination in just 215 years, propelled at 97% of the speed of light. This velocity, though incredibly fast, resulted in a time dilation factor of 4:1, meaning that for every year that passed on the Rigel, 4 years elapsed for a stationary observer. However, this placed Rigel at a significant temporal disconnect from the rest of the generational fleet, most of which traveled at 99% of light speed, experiencing time at a 7:1 dilation factor. This divergence created an unforeseen consequence: a growing social disconnect. The vast interstellar society, bound together by quantum communication, was designed to function within a relatively synchronized timeline. But for the people traveling on Rigel, most of its sister ships seemed trapped in slow motion, their interactions lagging behind like echoes from a distant past. The only vessel with which Rigel could communicate in near real time was Solder, another ship traveling at 97% light speed, still 235 years away from its own destination. This subtle but profound schism manifested in unexpected ways. Emma Anderson's Interstellar Sport, a cultural pillar that once fostered unity and competition among the fleet, became inaccessible to Rigel and Solder. Their reaction times, almost twice as fast as those aboard the slower dilated ships, made any fair participation impossible. The once thriving Global League, which had become a shared experience across ships, now excluded them by the laws of physics. Yet, not all forms of entertainment suffered. Art, literature, cinema, and music flourished. Movies and books could be shared across the network, untouched by the relativistic gap. Turn-based games, requiring strategy rather than reflex, emerged as a cultural bridge. While fast-paced competition was no longer viable, patience and contemplation became valued commodities. Even interstellar tourism found ways to adapt. Travelers aboard Rigel and Solder learned to adjust their expectations, knowing that communications with other ships required delayed responses. From their perspective, the rest of the fleet moved in slow motion, a hypnotic waltz through time. In contrast, the inhabitants of other ships, acutely aware of this difference, adopted concise, efficient messaging, understanding that Rigel's world was evolving at an accelerated pace. Ironically, this made Rigel and Solder prime destinations for interstellar tourism. Their societies, racing through time compared to the rest, were always ahead in development, constantly building and innovating at a speed unmatched by their counterparts. Travelers from slower dilated ships found themselves marveling at advancements, new cultural movements, architectural marvels, and technological breakthroughs that seemed to spring forth in record time. But over time, this divide deepened. What began as an inconvenience slowly became an irreconcilable separation. The people of Rigel and Solder, once members of a shared interstellar civilization, now felt like outliers, a society accelerating beyond the grasp of the others. This growing isolation would later be scrutinized in painful detail, particularly after the dark fate that befell the Rigel mission. Rigel's destination was a terrestrial eyeball planet nestled within the habitable zone of the Rigel system. This world was among the first identified to contain liquid water, a rare find orbiting an M-type main sequence star. Unlike the majority of red dwarfs, whose violent solar activity stripped away planetary atmospheres before life could take root, Rigel's star was an anomaly. Its unusually low flare activity meant that its orbiting planets had a better chance to retain a stable atmosphere, a miracle of astrophysics that made it one of the most promising exoplanets within humanity's reach. But Rigel's new home was far from Earth-like. Eyeball planets, as they were called, were tidally locked, one hemisphere forever scorched beneath an unmoving sun, while the opposite side remained in eternal darkness, encased in frozen wastelands. Much like Earth's moon, which perpetually faces the planet, Rigel's new world remained motionless in relation to its star,
locked in a cosmic equilibrium that divided the surface into extremes of fire and ice.
Despite this, astrophysicists had long theorized that such worlds held a sliver of habitability, a fragile boundary known as the twilight zone. This thin band of perpetual dusk, where the infernal heat of the dayside met the frigid void of the night, was thought to harbor temperate conditions. If liquid water could exist anywhere on the planet's surface, it would be here, a ring of endless sunset, where the battle between light and darkness created a delicate atmospheric balance.
Regel's eyeball planet was 30% larger than Earth, its vast landscape stretching beyond anything humanity had ever known. Fortunately, its composition was remarkably similar in density, resulting in a gravitational pull approximately 3 times that of Earth. This would pose a significant challenge to human physiology. Prolonged exposure to increased gravity could lead to muscle strain, bone compression, and circulatory stress, turning simple movement into an exhausting ordeal.
Yet, centuries of preparation had given humanity an edge. Advanced exoskeletons, lightweight yet powerful, had been engineered to counteract the strain, enabling settlers to walk the surface with minimal exertion. Additionally, nanobot-assisted biological adaptation promised long-term physiological adjustments, ensuring that over time, the colonists' bodies would gradually acclimate to the heavier world. The arrival of Rigel was nothing short of a monumental achievement, not just for those aboard the ship, but for the entire interstellar fleet still journeying through the void. For the first time in centuries, humanity was about to set foot on a new world, not as wanderers, but as pioneers. A wave of jubilation and renewed hope swept across the global network of generational ships, spanning thousands of years of separation. It was the moment they had all been waiting for, the first step toward reclaiming their place in the universe. For those on Rigel, however, there was no time for celebration beyond a fleeting moment of triumph. The next 100 years would demand relentless effort, precision, and sacrifice. There was simply too much to do, too many systems to establish, structures to build, resources to secure. The settlers understood the magnitude of their mission, and they faced it with unyielding determination. The first priority was to repurpose the generational ship itself. Just as they had done centuries ago on the dark side of the moon, Rigel's crew seamlessly converted their vessel from an interstellar ark into a massive construction platform. The generational ships had always been designed for adaptability, allowing them to transition into space stations with minimal modification. Within mere weeks, Rigel transformed from a vessel of transit into a hub of industry, an orbiting factory tasked with birthing an entire civilization. With their new shipyard operational, the next step was to construct a fleet of resource-gathering vessels. Their world, though promising, lacked the immediate infrastructure to sustain life. They would need to mine, refine, and transport essential materials before setting foot on the surface. The first priority was energy. Without it, nothing else could begin. The settlers knew exactly where to find it. One of the defining reasons for choosing M-type and K-type star systems was their tendency to harbor tidally locked planets, constantly bathed in stellar winds, rich in helium-3. This precious isotope, invaluable for fusion energy, had long been the fuel of choice for deep space civilizations. Rigel's system proved to be particularly abundant. Scattered among its multiple small rocky planets, many with low gravity and exposed regolith, helium-3 lay waiting to be harvested. Within just 1 year, the settlers successfully designed, constructed, and deployed their first mining ship, a marvel of engineering that swiftly swept across the system, collecting enough fuel to power their civilization for centuries. The sudden burst of progress ignited an unprecedented sense of momentum. After 2 centuries of monotonous travel, they were finally building, advancing, creating. The excitement wasn't just confined to Rigel. Due to time dilation, The rest of the fleet witnessed the birth of a new world in accelerated time, watching civilization unfold and fast forward. With energy secured, they turned to their next great challenge: protecting the planet itself.
Though Regel's red dwarf star was less volatile than most, it still emitted dangerous stellar winds and occasional flares. If left unchecked, these forces could erode the planet's fragile atmosphere and render long-term settlement impossible. To prevent this, the settlers began developing an artificial magnetic field generator, a massive construct designed to sit between the planet and its star, deflecting harmful radiation and allowing the planet's weak atmosphere to grow and stabilize.
This would be humanity's first attempt at planetary-scale engineering, a feat that had only been theorized in the past. If successful, it wouldn't just preserve Rigel's habitability, it would pave the way for future terraforming efforts across the galaxy. All the while, the settlers conducted meticulous surveys of their new home. Though the Twilight Zone, the only habitable strip of land, was narrow, spanning just 100 kilometers across, the sheer scale of the planet ensured that their settlement area was vast. At 30% larger than Earth, the available land stretched across thousands of kilometers, offering more than enough room for expansion. The first landing craft was completed just 5 years after Rigel arrived in orbit. It was a momentous milestone, marking the beginning of humanity's return to planetary life after more than 2 centuries adrift in the void. Meanwhile, promising developments emerged from their artificial magnetic shield, a colossal construct positioned between the planet and its star, designed to deflect stellar winds and mitigate surface radiation. Within just a few years, its effects became measurable. The planet's surface temperature had cooled by 0.1 degrees Celsius. At first glance, the change seemed negligible, but in reality, it was a monumental shift. This small decrease expanded the habitable Twilight Zone by 5%, increasing it to 105 kilometers of potential settlement area around the planet's circumference. In the grand scheme of planetary engineering, it was the first sign of success, a proof of concept that humanity could, in time, reshape entire worlds.
The chosen landing site was a carefully selected terrain near a vast sea of liquid water. Decades of orbital analysis had identified this location as rich in essential minerals, providing the foundation for self-sustaining construction. If humanity was to reclaim a foothold on solid ground, this was where it would begin.
The first crewed descent was deliberately small and calculated, a team of just 4 pioneers. There was no turning back. Once the landing craft touched down, there would be no way to return to orbit. The mission was one way, a commitment to spend a lifetime on this uncharted world.
Everyone understood the risks. No matter how thoroughly they had analyzed the planet's environment, there was always the looming specter of the unknown. Biological hazards, unforeseen radiation effects, unanticipated atmospheric contaminants. The hard truth was that the first settlers might not survive. But despite these dangers, hundreds of volunteers applied for the mission, willing to sacrifice themselves for the survival of their species.
Not just anyone could endure life on a world where gravity was 3 times that of Earth. While exoskeletons and nanobot-assisted enhancements had been developed to ease adaptation, prolonged exposure to higher gravity still posed immense physical strain. Candidates who were tall and heavy were immediately ruled out. Their mass, combined with the increased gravitational force, would place too much stress on their cardiovascular and skeletal systems. Instead, the ideal candidates were short, but exceptionally strong, individuals who could handle long-term strain with minimal health complications. After a rigorous selection process, 2 men and 2 women were chosen from among the hundreds of applicants. They ranged in age from 20 to 40, their peak physical and mental resilience crucial for the mission ahead. But the selection wasn't just about survival. It was about longevity.
This mission wasn't a short expedition. It was a 40-year commitment. Scientists had determined that 4 decades of continuous exposure were needed to fully evaluate whether humans could permanently inhabit the planet. They needed to monitor long-term effects, not just on physical health, but on mental endurance, biological adaptation, and ecosystem integration. The last thing humanity wanted was to commit en masse to planetary settlement, only to discover a slow-acting poison, an insidious radiation leak, or an atmospheric imbalance that would make long-term survival impossible. By the time those effects were discovered, it would already be too late. So these 4 pioneers would serve as humanity's vanguard, the first to set foot on solid ground in over 2 centuries. They would live, work, and build in solitude, knowing that no one was coming to bring them back. Their lives would be spent alone but together, forging the foundations of a new civilization, knowing that generations of humanity's future depended on their success.
After an exhaustive selection process, 4 pioneers were chosen to make history, the first humans to set foot on solid ground in 3 centuries. Each of them had been carefully selected, not just for their skills and physical resilience, but for their ability to endure the unknown, adapt under pressure, and work together in absolute isolation. Donna Cruz, 37 years old, 5 feet tall, a highly experienced doctor and former top-tier athlete aboard Rigel. Donna had once captained her ship's competitive team. Her sharp mind, leadership skills, and medical expertise made her the natural choice for team leader. Caleb Lynch, 33 years old, 5'2" feet tall. A hydroponics specialist with a deep passion for music, Caleb had spent years tending to the vital food systems of Rigel. Outside of work, he was a talented multi-instrumentalist and an avid soccer player, known for his humility and unwavering reliability. His expertise would be critical for ensuring sustainable food and air production on the planet's surface. Teresa Hoffman, 28 years old, 8 feet tall. A brilliant software developer specializing in game programming, Teresa was known for her meticulous planning and problem-solving skills. While she had never been drawn to athletics, she excelled at badminton, using her small stature and incredible speed to her advantage. A quiet, reserved thinker, she was nevertheless an indispensable organizer, a mind capable of keeping their mission running efficiently.
Albert Wolf, 22 years old, 3 feet tall. A young and gifted pilot in training, Albert had been among the fastest game runners across the fleet. Though his talent had gone largely unnoticed beyond Rigel and solder due to time dilation limitations, his frustration had fueled a relentless drive to push boundaries. His boundless energy and enthusiasm sometimes overwhelmed those around him, but there was no denying his incredible determination and skill.
The selection process spanned an entire year, scrutinizing every aspect of the candidate's physical, mental, and psychological resilience. Once chosen, their training began. A grueling year-long program covering medicine, hydroponics, robotics, mechanics, software engineering, survival techniques, and planetary sciences. They needed to be prepared for every possible scenario, from medical emergencies to equipment failures. Of course, each of them had specialized knowledge crucial to the mission's survival. Donna's medical expertise was paramount. Her willingness to embark on this one-way journey was hailed as a massive victory for the mission. Caleb, while not a hydroponics engineer, had over a decade of experience working with sustainable food systems, making him the designated agricultural expert on the surface. Teresa's strategic thinking and software proficiency made her essential for problem-solving and mission planning. Albert, despite being young, displayed extraordinary talent as a pilot, proving himself capable of handling critical landings and vehicle operations. His ability to absorb knowledge like a sponge further solidified his place on the team. Over the course of the year, they trained, worked, and lived together, forging an unbreakable bond. They were no longer 4 individuals. They were a team. Humanity's first ambassadors to an alien world. Then, at last, the day arrived. Across the entire network of generational ships, spanning thousands of years of time-dilated history. Every surviving human paused to witness history unfold. For the first time since humanity was forced to flee Earth 3 centuries ago, people would once again stand on solid ground. No one wanted to miss a single moment of it.